Hello and welcome to this video, which is designed to help teachers of computer science get the best from Exampro. Over the next 10 minutes or so, I'll be showing you some of the important aspects of Exampro that you might have missed. When you first log into Exampro, you see the gatekeeper. Now, I've got quite a lot of question banks on my gatekeeper, and your school might have subscribed to quite a few, so it's sometimes easier to click on the subject at the side and then you drill down to ICT computer science and see just the ones you're interested in. You'll notice that we've got two tabs up the top for the current year and the archive. The archive has got the legacy specifications in there. The idea being if there are areas of the specification, the old specification, that you want to include in your teaching, maybe to extend your students or for research candidates, then those questions are still there. We have removed any irrelevant questions for the new specs in the new question banks. So if we go into the A-level ICT and computer science, first of all, it's worth noticing that we've got the skeleton programs down here. If you click there and then into these, then you get all of the skeleton program material there. So that's all there ready for you to use. Most people know that Exampro contains past paper questions, but it's useful sometimes to know where the questions came from. So the way you look at that in ICT is to look at the exam session. And if you look back here, we can see that we're going all the way back to summer 1999 when we had some NEAB papers. And you'll notice that some of the questions that are missing. That's probably because question 8 was deemed not relevant to the new specification. Obviously, as you go further back in time, you might find that there are subtle differences with the style of the questions, but we feel that the content of the questions is absolutely relevant to the new specifications, and therefore you might wish to use those questions in your classroom. The specimen papers are also there, and they're obviously the most up-to-date for both style and content. Now, if you want to know where a particular question came from, if you click this question ID button, which is just under the question box, you find a little code appears. At first they look a bit strange, but it's quite easy to unpick them. These ones, the QSP, are from the specimen papers. Then if you go back, then you get 2015 paper 3 question 9, for example. So you can start to see where the questions came from, and you can start to understand where the questions came from. Now, most people use searches, but people don't necessarily use searches in the most effective way. First of all, with the preliminary material, if you click on one of the preliminary material sections, then you'll find that you get all the questions that are related to that preliminary material all in one place, so you can pull them down together. Now, a way of collecting all of the questions in the question box is by clicking on the top, clicking on the bottom one while holding Shift, and then pressing this plus button that appears, and then you get all of those questions down. So now I've got all of those questions on the dice cricket game. I'll get rid of that. We have additive searching within Exampro. So for example, if I want to do some questions on software, I've now gone down to 119 questions from 700 odd. I could then choose to start my test with some short answer questions on software, pull some of these down, and then add in some structured questions on software after that. So I can start to pull them together. Then maybe I want to put in some questions on programming. These are the structured questions on programming, so I'm only changing one of those searches, and then I'll add in some short answer questions on programming as well. So you can see how that works by putting together the searches. Now I can save that to my online library, so programming and software, and then I can come back to that later. I could obviously, without even saving it, I can export it to PDF, and that gives you the best output from a sort of pagination point of view. But a lot of people want to put it into Word because then they can edit the questions. They can either add add new context, or they can take out the line spacing, or whatever they need to do with the questions. The other thing you'll notice is that this web link appears down the bottom. This is really useful, because, and that only appears once you saved it. If I do this and I open that web link, then I get to those questions on a very short URL. It's always eight characters, and then .exampro.net. The idea here is that you can send that to your students. You can give it to them, and they can access these on smartphone or on their computer at home or whatever. And your students could then answer those questions on paper or any way that you want. Unfortunately, we can't. It's not online answerable at the moment. If later you want them to have the answers, you can then share the mark schemes, save the changes, go back to my question, refresh, and the mark schemes have appeared. So that's really helpful for your students, and you can share things with your students in that way. Now, one of the things that teachers have said that they would like to know more about is which questions they've used, so they can avoid using those in topic tests. In a future version of Exampro, we're hoping to be able to flag questions, so you can flag them as you're going along as you're using them. However, at the moment there's a very easy workaround for doing this. So I start off and I'm going to do a topic. I'm doing databases now, and I've got 57 questions on databases. Now I'm going to go down the bottom, press Shift, click that, and take it all down. I've now got all my 57 questions. You can do that for up to 60 questions. If I then open a second document, I can drag questions between my documents. And by doing this, what I can do is I can set up that these are going to be my class documents. So this is databases, class questions. They're the ones that are safe to use in class for homeworks or whatever. And these ones are going to be databases test. And then I know that I've already segregated those. Now the nice thing, of course, is that I could give that link to my students, and then they've got a revision set of materials for databases that I can give them before the test, probably alongside the mark schemes, and they can do their own revision on those questions. And then I know that I haven't given them any of the questions that are going to be set in the test. Now, one thing about these short URLs, feel free to put in your VLEs, share them with your kids in emails or on worksheets or whatever, but please do not put them on the internet, because then you're sharing the questions that other teachers might want to use in their classes or in their tests. And likewise, please do not share Exampro passwords with your students. What happens, unfortunately, is students tend to put them on the student room, and then thousands of students are all using Exampro, and their teachers are not getting a good idea of how well their students are doing because they're being shared online. Yes, I want to close that. One last thing that you can do in Exampro that I think is really useful is you can look at the examiner's reports. So for example, if I was teaching system development, and I'm not very confident in teaching that, it's a new topic to me, I can flick through this. Now the first few are going to be the specimen papers, so they're not going to have the examiner's reports, but once you get to the past papers, you start to see examiner's reports turning up. Now if you click on these, students did not read the question carefully, they added something that wasn't careful, students did well, students using VB.net added something to their while loops wasn't great. These are really good for spotting the common misconceptions, the common mistakes. Sometimes they're absolutely just, students did not read the question, but sometimes they really drill down into individual languages and things like this. So that's a really helpful way of getting to know what you need to address in your teaching, so your students don't fall into the same traps as other people have in the past. and it's a bit better than reading the examiner's reports en masse, because they're just very dry documents that it's very difficult to look at. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this little video and that it's been useful. Please give us some feedback.